hit 7 years here, so we're getting it early, right? 17 degrees is definitely, does make it seem like Christmas a little bit faster. Now we'll go ahead and do prayer requests tonight. Any prayer requests on this side this evening? And she's the one that had leukemia? Is that what that was? Okay. Put that down here. Okay. Anybody else?
Remember my friend Dan in Texas, David? He got cancer very bad.
Okay, what's his, oh, I got really loud. What's his name?
Dan.
Dan, okay. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else? Who's that, Evan?
No, my dad.
Oh, your dad. Oh, that's good. Okay. Yeah, and did he say that the stitches from a previous thing came undone? Huh.
Apparently very rare, but it happened to him.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm not used to him being down.
He's not able.
I'm glad it was just something I could fix like that. All right. I know Sean had surgery on his back. I'm sorry, not his back, on his neck on Tuesday, or maybe it was Monday. He came home on Tuesday. So pray for him. It was apparently a pretty lengthy surgery. So pray for him as he recovers. And Wendell Dobbs is recovering from back surgery. And I know Brenda was in the hospital, and she's doing better, but we want to continue to pray for her. Anybody else tonight? Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Pray for my brother. He's checked himself out of rehab, and he's got a drink problem.
Okay.
And his wife's pregnant, so just do that for him.
Okay, what's his name, Paul? What?
Joseph.
Joseph, okay. Does he live around here?
No, he lives in Canada.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I was my family the other day, and I'll have an easier week this week, so I'm going to be thankful for that.
Okay, amen.
Also got word a couple evenings ago that a couple people who used to work with us at business passed away.
Oh,
And me broke up my family. So pray for their family.
okay. All right, anybody else tonight? All right, as you get in the holiday times, a lot of times if there's, if people go through things, the holidays just make them bigger and louder, so want to make sure we pray for people this time of the year, and you just never know who you're around or what people have gone through. Just a simple kind word or going out of your way to notice people goes a long way, right? To encourage folks. It's a good time of the year to do that. All right, anybody else tonight? Okay, we'll go ahead and pray. Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for Wednesday night Bible study, and I just pray that you would help us as we continue to look at the book of Job. And Lord, I just thank you for this opportunity. I know that the weather being colder does affect things, and I just thank you for those that were able to come out tonight. And Lord, I just pray as we open your word that it would be encouraging to us. And just thank you for a time where we can mention people in prayer. I think about when a group at church was praying for Peter while he was in jail. And while they were actively praying, Lord, you answered that prayer request. I just want to thank you that the names that we mention and the things that we bring in front of you, Lord, we know that you care and you're able to take care of them, and then you can work behind the scenes. Lord, I'm sure that night that wasn't the only prayer request that you heard. There's probably people praying all over. But that night you heard and you answered that prayer for that church. And as we come before you tonight, I pray that you would do the same thing. Lord, that you would, Lord, just reach down from heaven. And Lord, help us to never take it for granted or, Lord, get used to that we're able to do that. That the God of heaven can hear us and does care. And Lord, I pray for all the families in our church. Lord, you know each one that calls this place home, and you know the things that they're going through personally and their extended family. And Lord, I just pray that you would be with each one. Lord, that you would help and comfort and supply their needs. Lord, I just pray you put a hedge of protection around each home, Lord, like you did Job. And Lord, the enemy's out there, and especially as people are faithful, the devil will try to get in there. And I just pray that you would be with each family in our church. Lord, I just pray as we have the services through the month of December, a lot of times it'd be when people often come more during that month than they do others. And Lord, I just pray for those that are still struggling with being faithful. Lord, this would be a time, Lord, that you would draw their hearts back in, and Lord, encourage them to be in the house of the Lord. Lord, I just, especially since it's Christmas, and this is an opportunity for us where we set this time aside to celebrate your birth. And Lord, I pray that that spirit would be in the air of our church. I pray that you'd be with the events on this weekend as Beverly and her husband come in, and thank you for their heart for Africa. And Lord, it'd be a good time of fellowship with our church. And I know there's other people from other churches going to be involved in that. And Lord, I just pray that you would, Lord, just use that to be an encouragement. And Lord, tonight with these prayer requests, I thank Jenny, and I don't, the fact that she's mentioned every week by Sherry. Thank you that she has a friend that cares enough to do that. And Lord, not only mentions her name here, but I'm sure prays for her at home. This is a lady who's been battling cancer and the treatment for a long time. And Lord, as I pray as she goes through the Christmas holidays, that you continue to strengthen her, help her to have, Lord, just a blessed time of fellowship and comfort from her family. And Lord, I just pray that you continue to walk this journey with her. Lord, it's up to you, and we trust that. We know you can heal, Lord, but I know without a doubt, whichever road she goes down, I know she won't be alone. And Lord, I just pray that that would be evident to her. I pray for Alexander and his prayer request tonight. And Lord, I also know he's praying for his son. And Lord, I know he prays for his family. And Lord, I just ask that you would intervene there, and that you would work, and that you would use Al as a light and a testimony in his home and to his children. And Lord, that you would meet the needs physically there and bring healing. And Lord, I just pray that you would use Al and this as a continued light there and encouragement to his family. Lord, I thank you for Ron and being able to get his eye taken care of. Lord, I know that that's something he struggled over the last few weeks, and Lord, I'm glad there's an answer. I just pray you guide the hands of the doctor that's going to be doing that surgery. And Lord, I pray that there would be an immediate release there for him, and Lord, that he'd be able to get his eyesight back. Lord, I just thank you, Father, for his faithfulness. I just pray you'd be with him through that journey. For Sean and Wendell, and I know Chris also has surgery coming up. Lord, I pray that especially after the surgery, with the recovery period, and or especially with back and neck surgery, and I think Sean's got shoulder surgery, or Chris does rather. Lord, I just pray that that it would fix the problem, and that their recovery would be quick, and you'd get them back on their feet, and Lord, that you would help heal them, and there wouldn't be any problems or side effects with those things. And Lord, I know that they would even go through this surgery if it wasn't something that was hurting them or causing problems. And Lord, it would be just a great relief to have those problems addressed, and just ask that you would be with those guys as they go through that. And for Paul's brother, Lord, that is struggling, he had an opportunity to be in rehab and didn't finish it. And Lord, I pray that tonight, right now, wherever he's at, that you would bring his own brother up in mind, and he would remember the progress Paul and his wife has made and the changes that they've made in their life, and that he could have those same changes, because the same God that helped Paul can help him. And Lord, I know he's got a good family. He's got a praying dad. He's got a praying brother. And Lord, I pray wherever he's at tonight, that he would not feel alone. And Lord, that he would seek out help. He could even check himself back in. And Lord, I know especially going through a divorce and having an addiction problem at the same time could really compound the problem. Lord, I know that there are lots of couples that, Lord, face things that just seem insurmountable. And then when you go through them, you don't think you're going to get to the other side of it. And Lord, not only in his life, but in the other people's lives that are going through those very same things, God, that you would just bring answers. Lord, I know that you can put things back together again. You can reconcile. And Lord, you can give second chances. And oftentimes it's an opportunity that the devil gets into and causes other problems. So I just pray you protect Paul's brother as he's going through this, and you give him the strength to be able to lean on you and get victory over the addiction in his life. Lord, I thank you for Brenda feeling better. I know she spent a few days in a hospital last week and had to miss Thanksgiving with her family. God, I know she wants to be in church. And Lord, I pray that you would help her to be able to do that. And Lord, I pray that she would strengthen her body, and that you would help these blood transfusions that she got to be able to work and not need any more. And Lord, I just pray you get her back on her feet. I pray for Gary and his job. Lord, I know he's been a blessing to my parents. I pray you keep him safe on the road. Help him as he continues to reach out to his family. And Lord, the ones he asked prayer for that passed away. Lord, and just wherever he goes with that bus, I pray the light would go with him. And I just thank you for loving us. Lord, thank you. Ask that you'd be with our country and the changes that are ahead. Lord, I pray for around the world where there's seems to be not a lot of stability. Lord, I pray that you would use those as open doors for the gospel. We love you. We ask this in your precious name. Amen. I know, let's go ahead and find the book of Job. My friend that I went to Bible college with pastors in Lebanon. Actually, he pastors in Beirut. Let me find the right. So we're in chapter 30. So he pastors in Beirut, and I actually talked to him on the phone this week. It's kind of crazy that I could pick up WhatsApp. I spoke to Pakistan and Lebanon all in the same day. And it's crazy that you can just, boom, that easy, be in that part of the world. Anyway, Ahani pastors a church in Lebanon. I was reading his prayer letter. His prayer letter sounds a little different from his perspective, and it went like this. He said, please pray for our country. There's been over 4,000 people killed. There's been over 2,000 drone and missile attacks. And he said the southern border, there's all kinds of Lebanese that have been displaced from their home. Now, he's writing that as a Lebanese. Now, of course, he's a Christian, and I know, that he would be behind Israel. But he's thinking about his country, right? Because they're going through that, and they're having to deal with that. Of course, there's some bad actors in that area. But here's what he said. He said, what it has done is he's been able to lead lots of people to the Lord. Well, Lebanon, that would be a rough place to share the gospel. I mean, you've got a lot of Muslim influence there, quite a bit. It's a dicey area to begin with. And so what we think is a bad thing, and it is a bad thing. It's a bad thing for Israel, but it's also causing Israelis to think about eternity. It's a bad thing for Lebanon, but it's causing Lebanese people to really look at their faith and say, do I have a faith that is actually going to get me to heaven? You know? So in these opportunities, these hardcore religions that are difficult to break that barrier, you know, because of the personal threat that happens when somebody gets saved there, people are getting saved. You know, and I'm thankful that there's a guy in Lebanon that's got a church in Beirut that preaches the same gospel. He actually sat with me in Bible college. That's pretty cool. So I meant to mention that. You pray for him. All right, Job chapter 30, and we'll begin in verse 1. But now they that are younger. So in chapter 29, he kind of went through that whole thing and reflected back on how good God was to him and the position that he had before. Now in verse 30, but now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have sat with the dogs of my flock. So Job's looking back and he's thinking, well, this is what I used to be, and I just realized I'm going to tie my shoe while I'm talking to you, because if not, I'm going to end up stepping on it. He looked back and said, you know, the people that, you know, I once influenced and the people that I once took care of, they're the ones that are now having problems. And he said, now that I'm going through this problem, you know, these very same people are turning against me. But here's one thing I noticed in verse 1 that we have to question. But now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have sat with the dogs of my flock. He's saying, these people that are younger than me, they come from families that I wouldn't hang around. And he put it this way. He said, I wouldn't even let them sit with the dogs that guard my flock. Now let me ask this question. What we know of the gospel and what we know of Jesus, would that be the right outlook? Sometimes, because see, now here's the problem. Now he's being treated like that. So there is no doubt Job had a good testimony. But God is trying to do something in Job's heart and life. He is trying to teach him some. He's using him. I mean, he knows he's counting on Job to go up against the devil and win this. But there are still some things that Job can take away from this. So there were people that he looked at different. There were people that when he saw them, he would put them in a different class. There were people that he would maybe avoid if he could, just by that statement. He's saying, these people, I wouldn't let them sit with my dog. Well, that's pretty, I mean, if you're going to say that, that's pretty rough, right? I mean, that would be a bad testimony for a Christian to say that about somebody. We might all think that, probably shouldn't say that. When you look at somebody, it is really easy to look at them and judge them immediately based on their economic status. In India, there's still the lower class Indians are never expected to do anything more than be servants. But the upper class Indians are still a class warfare in India, and it's a big deal, right? There's still that way in America. There is definitely a class warfare thing in America. Sometimes you can't always control your situation, especially children. So let's say the children of this guy that Job wouldn't let them sit with their dog, that's not their fault. You can't choose who you're born to. You might get stuck in a situation and get treated unfairly simply because your parents are off the rails, right? And so Job's saying, okay, the kids, there's these kids, these young people, and they're calling me names, and they're avoiding me, and they're treating me bad. And he's like, Their parents I wouldn't even let sit with my dog. And then by that statement, he has to stop and think, well, maybe my attitude towards them is now coming back on me, and it's their opportunity to say, hey, how does this feel? You know? So, you know, we know this. This is biblical. God is not a respecter of persons. That's in the Bible. So whether you're rich or poor, that means he's going to treat rich people and poor people, people of notoriety. There will be presidents, no doubt, that won't be in heaven, that'll be in hell. It won't be because he didn't like how they, you know, whether they were Democrat or Republican. That won't be why. It'll be because of what they did with Jesus. Your position in this world will have nothing to do with the outcome of the judgment seat of Christ. Your economic status will have nothing to do with that. The family that you were born into plays nothing into that. On the judgment day, you are there strictly under what you did with Jesus. That's it. And everybody will be treated fairly based on that criteria. He's not a respecter of person. You know? So with that instead, if we're going to reach a lost and dying world, we can't be that way either. And it is a little difficult. When I look back, and I know there's all kinds of, you know, you can say, well, it wasn't always the same. But, you know, in the 40s and 50s, you know, if you were a certain color, you were not allowed to drink at the same water fountain as somebody that was white. And that in and of itself, how that ever, now I can say this, wasn't me. I didn't do it. I was born in 1969, right? You know, a lot of that, but it did happen, right? It was out there. And we might not have those extremes, but especially in a church body, that, you know, there should never be a clique. There should never be a who's who. There should never be, well, this group, because of their status, has more pull than this group. That has zero place in a church, right? It has zero place in the body of Christ, simply because God is not a respecter of persons. You should not have a greater voice because you give more money, or somebody perceives that you give more money, or, you know, I mean, that should never happen in a body of believers. We shouldn't even look through those lenses. And I think Job is kind of getting a little bit of a lesson here in that, you know, because his own words answer his own question. Yea, whereunto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished. For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in former time desolate and waste. He was saying these people, I mean, were needy people. These people had problems. Now these people with problems are the very same people that are talking about me and treating me bad. Says, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. Again, just simply by the words that he's using, he's saying these people, they were hungry. These people experienced famine. These people, you know, ate things that I wouldn't eat. Now here, again, let's go back. You know, an adult, you can have maybe less sympathy on an adult who has made their own problems. But what about the children? I mean, there are even kids in America that go to bed hungry, which should not happen in America. But when you have an adult that's supposed to be your mom and dad that can't make decisions for themselves, what about those kids? And why were we not born in those homes? So we can't just shut our emotions off and say, well, you know, they deserve that, or they had that, you know, because, or to say, they're to ever, you know, make fun of the fact that they can't eat or do certain things because of their economic status is probably not the attitude to have. It says here in verse 5, they were driven from among men. They cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in the caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Here, I don't know. I don't think we have, maybe down in Knoxville, but I know when I was in New Orleans, I would do a bus route, and we went to the projects. And let me tell you something. A project in New Orleans, I would rather be in a mud hut in Africa in a heartbeat. I mean, the stench coming out of some of those apartment buildings, they'll have like 9 dogs in there and they never take them out. You open the door and it's just like this urine just, burns your eyes. I remember one little place I'd go that every Sunday morning the mother would be strung out on a couch. There would be a different guy. We would go into the home and we'd have to get the little kids dressed. They just what they wanted is they wanted out of that house, right? They never missed. They were always there, And, so here Job's saying, he's trying to show you the class of people they are and saying, well, they dwelled in cliffs and they didn't have project buildings. Well, we have project buildings down here. One of the reasons why we have a social problem in America is the church dropped the ball in evangelism in a certain group of people. Those problems are problems only God can solve. And those are the places where the gospel needs to go. And those are the kids, and those are the people that we want in church. And yes, when they come, it can make people a little uncomfortable. In today's world, you got somebody coming in and they got, I literally had a guy say, I think I was with Gabe. He had no more room on his face for a tattoo because he was tatted granted, somebody comes in with full sleeves, full face tattoo, and you drop them in your average church setting. That does make people sometimes a little uncomfortable. We're getting a little bit more used to it because it's a little more mainstream than what it used to be. Or I remember when we had Robert, what was that guy's name, that preacher? Robert Gibson. My own kids asked me about Robert Gibson, and that was the guy that was in jail for killing 3 people. My own kids said, Dad, he killed somebody? I said, yes. He was in prison? He said, yes. And you invited him to preach at church? I said, yes. My own kids said, is that a safe thing? I said, well, of course, he's not, he's not actively killing people, but that makes people uncomfortable. Let me ask you this. You stand in front of a holy God, do you not think if he is holy that we would not make him uncomfortable? Of course. Right? We can say, well, we didn't do this and we didn't do that, but on the judgment day, we're standing there as a sinner just like him. Right? And we can't even begin to match who God is, right? And so Job even just pointing out, these things in these people's lives. Verse 8, they were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. And again, now he's being treated like that. The problem is he's being treated like he's viler than the earth now. He's being treated. So that is why I would stop and say, there's something there to learn, because he's pointing this out. He's saying, these people are now treating me the way I used to treat them. Well, how do you avoid that? Don't do that. Right? It is sometimes uncomfortable. When I was in New Orleans, every Thursday night I'd preach at the rescue mission. And you'd go in there, and they're all homeless, and the ones that can stay in there do. And one night, I was saying good night to everybody. This guy walks up and shakes my hand. And he had open sores all over his hand, but it was too late. He put his hand out there with nothing to do about it. And then while I'm shaking his hand, he actively looks at me and says, hey, pray for me. I failed my tuberculosis test. And I'm like, great. Right? I'm thinking, and I constantly have my hands on my face. I'm thinking, please, please, remember not to put your fingers in your mouth, right? And you go home and you think, am I going to catch something? Do I need to go get tested? I was at this is in New Orleans too. I was at the health department getting my shots for a trip. I don't forget where I was going. Anyway, I'm at the health department. The guy in front of me is talking about, he was there for some STD test. While he's talking about it, I was writing, and right when he said that, I put the pen from the health department in my mouth. And I thought, that was pretty stupid, right? And you think, oh, get me out of this place. I didn't even like going to the health department, because I'm thinking the only people that go to the health department are people with issues. But that's just because of our thinking, right? I mean, when Paul said, oh, wretched man that I am I really any better than any other human being on this planet? No. Not according to God, right? Okay, he goes on, he keeps going on with this. Now I am their song. So now he's saying, what I thought about them, they think about me. And now I'm their song, yea, I am their byword. I used to say, hey, look at them. Now they're saying that about me. They abhor me, they flee far from me, and spare not to spit in my face. Well, I would say, perhaps maybe if Job treated them a little different, then maybe in his time of need, they might not have done that. People know whether or not you care about them. People know whether or not you're just doing it. They can tell whether or not you genuinely care. And if you don't, well, in your time of need, you can't expect them to be out there with flowers, saying, hey, I'm praying for you, when, you're calling them a dog. Or you're looking at them that way, here's what I found out. A lot of times, those kind of people, when you do show kindness, they'll walk a mile with you. They oftentimes can be a lot more forgiving than Christians can be. So he says, because he hath loosed my cord and afflicted me, talking about God, because he hath loosed my cord and afflicted me, they have also let loose the bridle before me, saying, God has, he's the one, he's allowed this to happen to me. His grace has been taken off of me, and it's like God has just had free reign of wrath in my life. Now they feel justified in doing this, right? Upon my right hand rise the youth. They push away my feet, and they raise up against me the ways of their destruction. They mar my path. They set forward my calamity. They have no helper. They came upon me as a wide breaking in of waters. In the desolation, they rolled themselves upon me. So he's just talking about, now he's got multiple things going on. His children are dead. His wife isn't a positive influence. He is financially broke, and he's got an illness that plagues him every day. On top of that, now he has the drama of the reactions of other people. Like you need that, right? Okay? Now think about this. You already go through life, and you've got these things that are happening that you can't control. The last thing you need is somebody talking about you. Right? The last thing you need is somebody spreading gossip. The last thing you need is any more drama, right? I mean, that is enough. That's enough for one human being to have to deal with. Well, have we ever added drama to a situation where somebody was already going through something difficult? We could have made it easier for them. Instead, you add more drama. Right? He didn't need that. So now instead of thinking about, getting better or, being there for his wife, he's now concentrating on this mess. He's letting, and let me say this to you. You know that word, that thing, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words, they won't offend me. I don't know who wrote that. But I don't know if that's human, but I will tell you this. The best way to not be disappointed in how people treat you is don't expect much out of them. And you won't be let down. Just know that they're human. And human beings sometimes are rude. And human beings sometimes can say dumb things. And human beings can be insensitive. And if you're looking for that as your, seal of approval of other people, you will be disappointed all the time. If you're looking for an attaboy from other people, you're going to be disappointed. If you're looking for comfort from people and that's the only place you're getting comfort, you're going to be disappointed. So if you already expect, hey, listen, I want to give grace if somebody says something dumb to me. Why? I've said dumb things. So you're going to get a pass. Right? I'm not going to go bent out of shape, and I'm going to try not to let it ruin my day. Because at the end of the day, who's my hope in? The Lord. So if my, they must got out early. If my hope is in the Lord, well then I'm not going to, I'm not going to sit there and go, well, this person doesn't like me and they're saying this about me, because you already got your own life you're dealing with. This is just making it bigger. How much effort have you spent of your own emotions worrying about something somebody said? Yeah, take that, put it over here. Don't give it any attention. Don't give it any more fuel. Sometimes we don't even hear it from the person. What we do is we'll say, oh, so-and-so said, and then you go home and you think about it. And then you try to say, well, I wonder who it was. Has anybody ever said that, told you something, but then they didn't tell you who? I hate that. Right? Don't either tell me or don't tell me. But don't say somebody. Because you know what you do? You spend a lot of grief trying to figure that out. It's better off to say, I can't live that for them. So I'm just going to take these whatever, stick them over here, and I'm going to get my satisfaction and my validity from God, not from other people. Because Job is now, added this to his already overloaded plate. Verse 16, and now my soul is poured out upon me. The days of affliction have taken hold upon me. My bones are pierced in me. The night season and my sinews take no rest. So if there's anybody that ever says, I can't take any more, or this is a classic, I'm tired, or I can't do this anymore. Just remember, this is a good man. This is somebody that had a good testimony. And the devil is trying to break him down. It's not that God has forgotten Job. It's just that the cries of the enemy and the opposition of the enemy's gotten so loud, it's hard for him to hear it. He's focusing on that instead of focusing on what he knows about God. So he's thinking, man, I am just beyond my capability. And of course, that's where the devil wants him. Because what does the devil want him to do? He wants him to curse God. Right? So, he's just going at it. All right? It goes on to say this. By great force of my disease is my garment changed. It bindeth me about as the collar of my coat. He hath cast me into the mire, and I have become like dust and ashes. I cry unto thee, and thou dost not hear me. Is that true? Can you cry out to God and him not hear you? No. He's God. He can hear you. Does he have to answer for him to be God? No. Because what does he ask you to do? What is the basis of your faith? How do you get saved? Jesus died on the cross. But did that save you? It says by faith through grace. If you do not have faith, you will doubt your salvation. You ever done something bad? and then wonder, hey, are you saved? Right? How do you know you're saved? Right? How do you know you didn't lose it? How do you know you can't lose it? How do you know that your name's written down? How do you know those things? You're trusting what that Bible says. Have you ever met God? Have you ever seen God? Now, you have the Bible, and people told you God wrote that Bible, but did you see God write that Bible? No. I could put a lot of heat on your faith by saying, are you really sure that that just isn't a book? You see who wrote it? But you're going to tell me, no, I believe. Did you have to see God to get saved? No. I didn't have to see God to get saved. I had to trust that he's there. I don't need to see him. So when you're in that valley, you don't have to see him. You just got to know who he is. And what did he say? I'll never leave you. Okay, how many times have I got to tell you that? Right? That's what God would say. Well, I think you let Job thinks God left him. How do I know he didn't leave him? Because he said, I will never leave you. So he doesn't have to be visible. I just got to believe what he said and know that he's there and talk to him like he's there and pray to him like he does hear me, and then let what I know about God, you already know enough about God to help you in any emotional need that you have. You already know it. It is already there. There is enough in the Bible for you to lean on. There is enough help already in the Bible. He isn't going to say anything new to you that he hasn't already put in the Bible. So he is there, right? You know, I mean, it's like, do you trust me? God, I don't know where this is going. And God is saying, do you trust me? If your child died unexpectedly tomorrow, can you trust him? Would that not be a nightmare? Yes. Did it happen to somebody this week? Yes. Will it happen to somebody again? Yes. When that happens, can you step out in that dark and trust him? That God has a plan. What if that plan involves losing somebody before you thought that you would ever lose them? What if that plan involves going through something you couldn't even imagine going through? But he's saying, do you trust me? Reach out, grab my hand. I had to do that to get saved. I had to trust him. That he meant what he said. That he was going to forgive me of my sins. Not only the sins that I did before I got saved, the sins that I do while I'm saved. Sins that I haven't even done yet. He said he'd forgive me. So I'm trusting that. Well, when you're in those valleys and you're like, God has not, he's not hearing me. Oh, he hears you. What he wants you to do is to trust him. And remember, that is when we shine as Christians. When the storm comes, I just think in Pittsburgh, when Maggie and I lived there, when it would get snow like a foot in one day, all the stores would stay open. When it snowed like that, Maggie and I would always go do date night. Do you know why? Restaurants were empty. And it wouldn't matter. Everybody else would be at home, and we'd jump in that car and go. Right? Well, that's kind of like what your Christian life. We don't have to run away from the storm. Everybody else seeks shelter. You can stand right in the middle of it and let it blow 100 miles an hour. And you're not alone. Man, that's power. I don't need a compass. I don't need to see him. I don't even need to hear him. I know he's there. And then because I know he's there, I know that he can take care of me. He doesn't have to tell me, and he doesn't have to explain it to me. He just wants to know he's got that much influence in your life that you can just trust him. We all want to have schedules, and we all want to have answers, and we all want to know why. And he's saying, Dave, Can you just trust me even if you don't know why? Well, that's where he is definitely struggling. Look at verse 21. Thou art cruel to me. Thou art become cruel to me with thy strong hand. Thou opposest thyself against me. Now, is that a true statement about God? Later on, Job's going to put his hand on his mouth, and he's going to say, I am vile. Why? He shouldn't have said that about God. Is God cruel? Has God ever been cruel to you? No. Is God cruel to this world? No. He's not. How could he give his only son and be cruel at the same time? No way. So, if those feelings ever come about God not being there, or God not hearing you, or God being mad at you, or God being cruel to you, or God forgetting you, understand this, it is not God telling you that. There is an enemy out there that wants you to believe God is not who he says he is. And if you'll let him, he'll take you down that road. Oh, he forgot about me, or he hasn't noticed. No. Those things coming in your head, that's not from God. God didn't put it in his mind, God's being cruel to me. You know? And I'm sure, now that he's in heaven, he'd probably like to go back and rewrite some of this, right? Because now he knows. It says, I cry unto thee, and thou dost not hear me. I stand up, and thou regardest me not. Verse 22, thou liftest me up to the wind. Thou causest me to ride upon it, and dissolve my substance. For I know that thou wilt bring me to death, and to the house appointed for all living. Howbeit, he will not stretch out his hand to the grave, though they cry in his destruction. Did not I weep for him that was in trouble? Was not my soul grieved for the poor? When I looked for good, then evil came upon. He's saying, man, I did these things, so then why is this happening to me? Verse 26, when I looked for good, then evil came unto me. Now, let me throw this out to you. One of the verses in the Bible that has just about every commentary with nothing to say is when Jesus is on the cross and he says these words, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? You ever try to wrap your mind around that statement? Well, I know that Jesus wasn't doubting God. Right? I know that for what he went through in the garden, when he said, if it be your will, let this cup pass from me. Even though when he said that, what did he say at the end of that? He said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Which he knew why. He knew why he was on there. But in the same token, right after that, what did he say? He said, it is finished. So what we can take away from that is that it would be, he was still in a human body. And we have to deal with our human emotions. And so did he. But you know what he didn't do? He didn't quit. That's what he didn't do. Right? I mean, he was still in a human body, but he did not quit. And he knew that his father wasn't going to leave him in the grave. And he knew that he would be raised 3 days later. And that doesn't mean that he didn't know God was there. He already knew, but at that moment, he's feeling the weight of the sin in the world on him. And what did God have to do? God had to look the other way. And at that moment, he said, why hast thou forsaken me? And God's answer to Jesus was this: it's not you, it's them. It's their sins that caused me to look away because I can't. Ooh, that's a little overwhelming. But you know what he didn't do? He didn't quit. At that moment, could he have called 10,000 angels while he was on that cross? And what would have happened? you don't think the devil wanted him to do that? You don't think, he was present at the cross. You don't think that the devil was hoping that he could put enough pressure on Jesus at that moment? Because we know he showed up in Judas. The Bible says that they could literally see Judas, Satan entering Judas. So we know he was there. And the same thing that he was trying with Job, he was trying to isolate Jesus. He was trying to make Jesus feel like he was alone. And you know what he was hoping he'd do? Take that tap out button. And the second he were to mention it, there would be 10,000 angels on this planet wreaking havoc and getting him off that cross. So he heard all of those things, he felt all the things, but guess what he did not do? He didn't quit. And at the end of that, the Bible says, along with the words after he said, "It is finished." And the devil had to walk away from that and realize he didn't win. Now he's got to try to keep him in the grave, right? But he didn't do what the devil wanted him to do. Well, in our lives, do you know that everybody that is a born-again believer, you are more of an enemy of Satan than you've ever been. So yes, he wants to break you down. Yes, he wants to cause you to be ineffective. He'll use anything he can to do that. And your emotions is one of the biggest things he'll try, right? I mean, and so, you know, when you hear that, you just can't give in to it because you know he's there. Just a little bit more and we'll be done. Verse 27, my bowels boiled and rested not. The days of affliction prevented me. I went mourning without the sun. I stood up and I cried in the congregation. I am a brother to dragons and a companion to owls. When you look at those things, I think about, I don't know too much about the dragon part, but the owls I can tell you. An owl is not a positive thing in the Bible. I mean in Africa, not even close. Historically, you always see, that's why when you see Harry Potter, one thing you see in Harry Potter is you see owls. Why do you see owls in Harry Potter? Well, for longer than I've been alive, they've always been associated with some sort of witchcraft, right? So it can be a cute little owl in Harry Potter, or it can be, I don't know why they picked that, but I know why Africans do it. Because an owl looks different. There's no education, and they're like, why is an owl evil? Well, he can turn his head around. I guess they were watching The Exorcist too much, right? All right, he can turn his head around, or his eyes. They're big and they're scary looking. So this poor owl gets labeled as witchcraft. Well, even in the Bible, it wasn't a positive animal, right? So he's saying, and dragons weren't things you would invite over to your house either. And he's saying that's the company that I now have in these animals that are not liked and looked at as bad. I am now just like them. Okay, my skin is black upon me and my bones are burned with heat. My harp is also turned to mourning and my organ into the voice of them that weep. And that's the end of verse chapter 30. Isn't it crazy that a human being can get that low in their thoughts? Like, you know, your mind is a deep place. Your mind can be a very dark place. Your mind, I mean, have you ever in your mind thought about something bad happening to somebody you don't like? Or you don't have to confess that. But as a human being, sure. I got 101 ways that, do you realize if everything that was in our mind got out, we'd all be in big trouble? First off, we'd all be at a psychiatrist or on some kind of medicine for sure if they delved into the deep part of our mind. Your mind can be your worst enemy. 100%. Your mind goes everywhere with you and you can't. Have you ever tried to not think about something? How many times have you had trouble sleeping at night because you can't slow your mind down? right? You want to end the day and you can't shut it off. How many of you woke up in the middle of the night thinking about a problem you had in the daytime? That's because this thing can be a mess up there, right? But if you let God in it, and even though there's darkness calling your name, just understand who it is and what it is. And know that God doesn't do that. Like we know, being afraid. Does being afraid come from God? Nope. How do I know that? He's not giving us the spirit of fear. So if there's fear there, well, then it's not coming from God, right? If he's telling you to quit on God and quit on church, or, God's not out there telling you to do that. Quit on your family, he's not going to tell you to do that. Give up, he's not going to tell you that. Every human being that takes their life, and it happens every day, even Christian people, it's because they let their mind get in a dark spot. Don't let that happen. Let the light in there. You know the truth. You know what God says to you. Let that overpower it. You're not helpless. Turn the light on. Right? Get the truth in there. Tell him, I'm not alone. I don't care what you tell me about God. He is not leaving me. I might not know where this road's going, but I got his hand. Well, after a while, the devil left the desert because he couldn't get to Jesus. So he moved on. And he'll do that in your mind if you'll just don't lose a battle up there. Know that there's darkness in there and it doesn't come from God, so address it for who it is and what it is. And then hold on to what you do know about God and let that light just shine in there, and you can conquer, if you can conquer your mind. Here's another thing. Where does all sin begin? It's one thing, remember what Jesus said, or the Pharisees said this, I never committed adultery. And Jesus said, but if you thought it in your mind, you're guilty of it. You know what he's saying? Way before you could ever physically have adultery, you mentally had adultery. And that's what made you want to go after it in your flesh. So the root place to beat every sin is right here. Because you can beat the physical part of it, but still have to deal with the mental part of it. Right? I mean, you can just never physically have adultery, but then try to control all the bad thoughts in your head. That's another animal. Right? You might get the one done, but then the whole thought life. Do you know, it appears that the thoughts, he's writing them down as though I did them. Oof. That's why he said, if you hate your brother, you're guilty of murder. And I'm like, I haven't killed anybody. He's like, Dave, you got a massacre going on in your head. Right? I mean, you're killing people right and left. Oh boy. Then all of a sudden I realized, man, this is probably someplace I need to pay attention to. Right? This is where it's all fought and won right there. So, this week, don't let any human being rob you of something God's already given you. You're loved more than you will ever know. Just look at those prints in his hands. And that's enough. All right, let's see here. Brother Dale, will you close us in prayer?